So, hey, so let's talk about the violinist argument. I talked about abortion in a couple of videos, and people commented that okay, you should go for like the actual strong arguments for abortion and get away from like the concept of personhood. That's not the most important thing. And I believe that the personhood of the fetus is the crucial element, but that's something that Judith Thomson in her paper, A Defense of Abortion, does not agree with. She claims in this paper that even if we grant that the fetus is a person and has a right to life, it is still difficult to justify a pro-life position. So I will go through the arguments and I will discuss that, and but I will kind of summarize my point of view on abortion in general and on the cases of rape and or where the life of mother is in danger, etc. All right, so let's go through the paper. Now, the paper has different sections. She talks about some extreme cases that I don't agree with. Again, for example, in the case where the life of mother is in danger, I'm not in those kind of extreme views that even in those cases we should go for the life of baby instead of the life of the mother. But I won't go into the details. There are only a certain part of the argument, a certain part of the paper that she also thinks is the most important part. And that's the part where she tries to argue that right to life does not necessarily lead to the pro-life position that we're looking for, that abortion would be wrong. So the assumption of the paper is that a fetus is a person and has right to life. That would be my assumption also here. She starts by asking the main question, that what is right to life? Now she gives a couple of answers. The first one is, for example, is the right to life is the right to bare minimum for life? And she says no, and I also agree with her, because right to life does not mean that, okay, you just have to have the bare minimum. You have a right to have the bare minimum to have a life. That doesn't, to me at least, doesn't mean right to life. And then she goes on to the next best solution, and she says, okay, is the right is right to life is not to be killed? Is it the right not to be killed? And in my opinion, yes, that's the right to life means the right not to be killed. And she disagrees with that, and she says that there are a couple of difficulties with this position. And she provides two arguments in a form of reductio ad absurdum. And I will go through both of them and show that how it actually fails to prove what it wants to prove. All right, so because I'm reading through the paper, not the paper, but through my notes, so I will look into the monitor right down here. All right, so the first argument that she provides is like this. It's a very simple argument. So she says, all right, so let's suppose for the reductio argument, just lost the word, that right to life is right not to be killed. Okay, so let's assume that those are the same thing. And then she says, okay, our assumption is that, oh, I forgot about the violinist. Okay, so she uses this kind of example and applies these two arguments on that example. And the example is that you wake up one day and then you see that a violinist is attached to you. And someone from a society of music lovers tells you that, hey, yeah, so this famous violinist, he had a problem. His kidney was not functioning. You have the right blood, so we attached him to you. You just have to stay attached to this person for 9 months, and then he's going to be fine. You're going to be fine. But if you unplug right now, he will die. So the question is, can she unplug that? And if she can unplug that, what happens to the right to life of the famous violinist? So within that setup, she starts with these two arguments. First, she says, okay, the right to life, let's say that it's equal to the right not to be killed. And then she says, okay, the violinist has a right to life because he's a person. And then she says, okay, then if he has a right to life, and if right to life means the right not to be killed, that means the violinist has a right not to be killed. Therefore, everyone should refrain from killing the violinist. That's correct. Now, if everyone should refrain from killing the violinist, then everyone should refrain from unplugging the violinist from you. And that is absurd, because, I mean, we can all agree if you're attached to that violinist without your own, without your intention, or without your being aware of that, or consenting to that, then of course you should be able to unplug yourself from the violinist. But here it seems that we reached that conclusion that everyone should refrain from unplugging the violinist, and that's absurd. And which means that the assumption that we had, that the right to life is equal to the right not to be killed, is false. So right to life, it does not easily translate into the right not to be killed. So that's one of the difficulties that she mentions. And she tries it again in another argument. She says, okay, let's say that right to life is equal to right not to be killed. And then she says, okay, if someone has a right to something, for example, right to life, and we deprive them of that right, then we would treat them unjustly. So if someone has a right to life, for example, and if you violate that right, then we will treat them unjustly. So she says, okay, unplugging is killing the violinist, depriving a right to life is unjust, and right to life is a right not to be killed. From these three, we get the conclusion that unplugging is unjust. If we unplug the violinist, we are acting unjustly on that person, right? But this is absurd again, because everyone would agree that this is completely just for us to unplug the violinist. Therefore, the assumption that we have that the right to life is equal to right not to be killed is false. She also adds to all of these arguments that this basically means that the right to life does not guarantee use of someone else's body, because you can see that it's not killing, and if you cannot kill, then you cannot unplug. If you cannot unplug, that means that that person can use your body. So if the right to life equals right not to be killed, then right to life would guarantee the use of your body. But through these arguments, she wants to show that the right to life does not mean the guarantee use of your body. Now, what's wrong with these two arguments? But of course, the assumption, the faulty assumption that leads to absurdum is not that the right to life is equal right not to be killed. That's actually, in my opinion, correct. The false assumption here is that unplugging implies killing. So in the second argument, that's clear. In one assumption is that unplugging is killing the violinist. In the first one is kind of implicit. She says, okay, therefore everyone should refrain from killing the violinist. And from there she goes, therefore everyone should refrain from unplugging the violinist. Which means that, if you're unplugging, then you're killing. If you refrain from killing, then you refrain from unplugging. But is that a correct assumption? And I don't think so. So I will through the rest of the video try to explain why that's not the case. Why unplugging does not imply killing. Now, unplugging, what it does imply, what it is actually in the case of the violinist, is letting to die. Right? That's what happens. So the violinist has a problem with his kidneys. You unplug, you let him die. So Thomson is claiming that letting to die implies killing. In other words, if you let someone die, then you are killing him. But that's not true. And we can easily show that by showing that there are cases that we let people die, but that doesn't mean that we kill them. So for example, there is someone right now in the hospital that requires a kidney, and your kidney can actually help them to survive. But you don't do that right now because you're watching this video right now. There are people dying from hunger that we can actually save by giving some money to them, but we don't actually do that. In all of these cases, we're letting those people to die. We're letting those people who are in hospital right now to die. We're letting those people who are dying from hunger right now. More than 25,000 people die every day from hunger. We let them to die. Does that mean that we are killing them? That's the stretch. I don't think so. We cannot because otherwise we would all be murderers, right? It doesn't make any sense. Or imagine that there's a car accident, and like there are 10 people in that accident. You go there and you try to save them one by one, but you just have a limited amount of time and resource, right? And you save like 3 of them. The other 7 you cannot save. But of course, you could have gone for them instead of those first 3. So by saving those first 3, by choosing to save the first person, you basically you let the other persons to die. Does that mean that you kill those 7 person? I don't think so. So, and also in the case of the violinist, if I'm unplugging myself from the violinist, I'm letting the violinist to die. I'm not killing it. But there are cases that letting to die is actually killing. For example, if I inject poison to you and I have the antidote, but I just don't give you the antidote, I just let you die. Well, that's of course killing. If I get you create a very difficult mechanism, very complex, and then I don't know, like put a clock on it that after 1 hour there's a gun and it's gonna shoot you, and I don't do anything, I just let that happen, but then that's still killing. So letting to die can mean killing or can mean not killing. And so that's enough basically to show that these 2 arguments basically fail. So that absurd conclusion that we get is not because the right to life is not equal to right not to be killed. So in other words, letting to die does not imply killing. There's something else that we can also see that we need to show that in those cases that letting to die does imply killing, there is no absurd conclusion in those 2 arguments. Because, for example, let's think about that poison case, right? So the first argument says, okay, if that violinist has a right to life and has a right not to be killed, the violinist therefore has a right not to be poisoned. Or in other words, everyone should refrain from poisoning the violinist. And that's not an absurd conclusion. Of course, we should refrain from killing the violinist, from shooting it, from slitting his throat. From these are Thomson example that she puts alongside unplugging. She says shooting, slitting throat, unplugging, as if they're in the same category. They're not. And so yeah, that's not an absurd conclusion. And for the second one also, if you inject poison to the violinist, if you slit his throat, if you shoot them, that would be treating unjustly. That's not the same as unplugging. Of course, it's not the same as unplugging. So we see that the argument doesn't work. We can actually have the right to life to equal the right not to be killed, and make all these absurdities go away by just following the case that, okay, unplugging is not killing, and that fixes everything. All right, so I explained that we have these 2 different cases, that letting to die can mean killing, or letting to die can mean not killing, right? And it seems quite important here. Of course, it's quite important now. Now, the point is, how can we distinguish between these 2? Like if I give you a case of letting to die, what's the difference between these 2? Because we obviously sense something is different between them. But what is the difference? And I believe that the difference is something related to, one is related to the intention of that person. For example, if you're injecting poison, your intention is actually to kill that person. But when you go to save someone in the car accident, or you just don't give your kidney to someone who needs your kidney right now in a hospital, your intention is not to kill that person. You're not like, I'm going to kill that person by not doing this. And we can see this if it turns out, so imagine that, let's just go to this plugging case so everything is equal to each other, right? Imagine that someone is plugged to you and we want to unplug you. Now, if it happens that the procedure can happen with that person, the violinist, surviving, imagine that sort of operation, that we can unplug you, but the violinist can survive. Now, the intention can become clear here, because if I tell you that, hey, that we can unplug you, but the violinist survives, if you consider that operation as a failed operation, that means your intention was killing it. It's not just unplugging. You were trying to kill that person. Because I unplugged you, but the violinist survives. But if your intention was only just to unplug, is not killing that person, it might be letting that person die, but your intention here is just to unplug. And if I tell you, hey, the violinist, by the way, survives, you would be like, okay, I mean, I don't care, as long as I'm unplugged, right? So one is intention. The other one is also responsibility. Like, are you responsible for that or not? Are you responsible for that plugging in the first place or not? Are you responsible for that poisoning or not? Are you responsible for that accident that happened or not? That can also change it. So going back to the case of plugging, based on these two parts, the responsibility and the intention that you have, I guess we can have different levels of guilt that we can define in the case of abortion. Okay, so I will go one by one through them, and by all of this investigation that we did, we can actually make it clear whether this case falls on the side of killing, on the side of shooting or slitting throat, but that's not the case. But is it on the side of letting to die, but in the sense of killing it, or is it in the sense of not killing it, just letting it to die? All right. Now, the way that I chart them is like this. So imagine that someone is attached to you, and we want to do an operation to unplug that person that's attached to you from you. Now, I believe this is the highest guilt that we can define, highest degree based on these two degrees. That first, you are responsible for that attachment in the first place. And if they offer you an operation that can unplug you, but save both lives, your life and that other person or that fetus life here, for the example of abortion, if they offer you that kind of operation, you will refuse. You don't want an operation that ends up with the other person continuing to exist. So if you're responsible, if you don't want that operation that saves both lives, I believe you're guilty. Because you are responsible, you put that person there, and you don't want them to be saved. Your intention is to kill them. You deliberately want to kill them. That's just killing an innocent person. But interestingly, that's the majority cases of abortion. That's all abortion, minus rape, in which you are not responsible, and minus the cases in which the life of the mother is in danger. That's when saving both lives, that operation is impossible. But that's the majority of abortions. You're responsible for that attachment, and you would also reject an operation that saves both lives. That's the highest degree of guilt. We can reduce the amount of guilt, but it still stay on the side of killing. It is still, you cannot just say, okay, it's letting to die, it's not killing. No, it will be killing. That's when you are responsible, but you're also open to doing an operation of unplugging that saves both lives. Now, I don't know if that happens in reality, that would be someone who's pregnant, but she's open to saying, okay, just I don't want the baby, you can unplug it, and I'm fine if the baby survives. Now in the first case, the highest form of guilt, if you do an operation that, well, of course in that case you just don't want the operation, but even in this case, if you do the operation and the baby dies, you are still guilty, right? Because you are responsible for that plugging in the first place. So even if you are responsible and you're open to doing an operation that the priority is to save both lives, but in the end it just ends up bad for the other persons. For example, in the case of abortion, the fetus ends up being dead, then you are responsible. You are guilty of killing that child. Again, I don't know if this kind of situations happen, that the mother wants the baby to be saved. I'm not sure if we would call that abortion. Now, you're still on the side of killing. We can still reduce the amount of guilt so much that we would actually end up in the letting to die, not killing part. And that's the case of rape. And that's good news, because that means that in cases of rape, it's possible to do an operation without killing someone. And that would be the case when you are not responsible. Of course, in the case of rape, you're not responsible. And you do want to have an operation that saves both lives. Now, if that's the case, see, so if you're not responsible, of course, it's a case of rape. But now you see a child attached to you, and he is also a victim, because a third party attached you two together without your consent. And now we want to do an operation separate you two from each other. And you're okay with the operation in a form that tries to save both lives. Now imagine that we do that operation and the baby dies. Now in the previous case, when you were responsible, if the baby dies, you killed it. But here in this case, I believe even if the baby dies, in the case of rape, then you would not be guilty of killing that child, because that plugging in the first place was not your responsibility. But you see, but still, that's not the abortion that we're talking about. So this operation is crucial here, because we can increase the guilt again if in the case of rape. For example, in the case of rape, imagine that, okay, you're not responsible, but the woman says, I don't want that operation that saves both lives. I want that operation that wipes the other person out of existence. Now that would be again in the side of killing. Because why do you want to do that? I understand that you hate that child. I understand that that child will be an emotional burden on you, even if it's not like financial. If it stays out of your life, it would still be something on your mind. It would damage you psychologically, it would damage you emotionally. I understand that. But that doesn't mean that you have the right to kill it, because that person's right to life trumps your right to that kind of emotional damage. Because, I mean, isn't that obvious? We already have that in place. There are a lot of people that we hate. There are a lot of people that bully us. There are a lot of people who cause us emotional damage, their emotional burden. But we cannot kill them. We cannot wipe them out of existence because we hate them, because they are just a burden. They're always on our mind. They prevent us from sleeping. We cannot just wipe them out of existence. So if someone is raped, they're not responsible, but they insist on wiping that child out of existence. The child, not the rapist, the child who's completely innocent here. That's intentional killing again. That will raise the level of guilt to the killing level again. And of course, we have even lower levels of guilt. That's when you're not responsible, and it's also not possible to do an operation that that saves both lives. Then we just have to end up killing the baby. That's when the life of the mother is in danger. So in this, I see a very consistent framework. Yes, that it works fine. And the good news is, again, in the case of rape, there is an option. It's about the attitude of the mother. That it's possible to fall on the side of killing someone if the mother has the intention of killing, or on the side of not killing. And of course, we would always have to go on the side of not killing. So in summary, the majority of abortions fall on that highest level of guilt. That's you're responsible. You don't want an operation that saves both lives. You're just killing someone, killing an innocent person. Even if you're responsible, even if you're open to such an operation, again, if the baby ends up dying, you're responsible. Again, killing still. In cases of rape, I believe the woman is not responsible, of course, but she should be open if she wants to do the moral thing here. She should be open to doing an operation that saves both lives, not to wipe the other person out of existence. And of course, in the cases of those extreme cases that the life of mother is in danger, you should also be permitted to do the abortion and kill the fetus. Yeah, I guess that covers the main points of the paper, and basically shows that if we assume that the fetus is a person, then we're going to have problem. Then we're going to have the majority of abortion falling on that side of killing. And so again, the suggestion that Thomson has in the paper is not correct. That even if you give the fetus the personhood, still there's a long road to justify this kind of pro-life position. No, actually the main problem should still be on the personhood, which I defended somewhere else. And you can watch those videos. Cheers.